So, Starfield was the first new game world for Bethesda in over 20 years. It was at least 8 years in the making, vast amounts of space for us to explore in the Bethesda built universe. It had all the hallmarks of being a once in a generation game that would keep us entertained for years to come, much like Skyrim still does to this very day. The reality, however, was quite the opposite. Starfield arrived with a bang and then slipped quietly out the back door shortly afterwards like no one even noticed. There was barely a mention of it at the Game Awards, which took place only a few months after its release. So, what happened? Why did Starfield not set the gaming world alight like we had all expected it to? Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and find out. Now, this video isn't going to be me laying into Starfield for 15 minutes. I mean, well, mostly it is, but I'm going to give credit where credit is due because there are some aspects of the game that I legitimately enjoyed. And one of those is the side quests. Bethesda have been known for creating really good, in-depth side quests to go with the story, and Starfield is not too different here. You can easily sink tens of hours, maybe even hundreds of hours into this game world without really experiencing the same quest lines twice. Minus the story, of course. If you like single player experiences with Bethesda games, the chances are you'll like what Starfield has to offer in that respect. The story, however, is lackluster, but the side quests helps prop it up just a little bit. Secondly, I also like how the gunplay works in the game in first person mode. Now, I've heard third person can be a bit clunky at times, but in first person I think it's spot on. The guns feel well refined and satisfying to use, there is a wide variety of weapons you can stumble upon, and you can easily upgrade them to your liking. So, no issues with that aspect of the game for me. And speaking of customization, I think the ship customization in the game is pretty damn awesome as well, because, well, you can create literally anything. Some of the creations I've seen on YouTube are a testament to just how much freedom you get with your own starships in the game. Something that games like No Man's Sky are lacking, and to top off your quirky and awesome ship designs is the fact that you can then go up to your ship and just walk around your creation, which looks exactly as it did in the builder. So, as I said, credit where credit is due. I also think the visuals in Starfield, with its more realistic take on space exploration, are really good. So, the planets and cities you explore, all of that technology you encounter, the buildings you infiltrate, and the ships you fly. Within reason, of course. I couldn't get enough of the visuals in the game, and some of it was truly striking. But that is where most of the good stuff comes to a swift and abrupt halt. Now, when Starfield arrived, I bet millions of us dived headfirst into its universe with great excitement and very high expectations. The majority of us probably blasted through the campaign, felt a bit underwhelmed by it, and then went on to the side quests and started exploring all the planets, hoping for something more interesting would make itself known to us. But sadly, it wasn't to be. I mean, I guess in fairness, Bethesda have achieved what they wanted to, a realistic universe with God knows how many planets to explore and resources to loot within random points of interest. On the planets, that is. But the problem with that is so much of the game is empty and not actually worth bothering with, if you ask me. Now, if the story was better and the characters were more interesting, maybe they could get away with it all. But the emptiness surrounding it brings it down too much. Now, there was a major update that came out this month, and I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Now, does anyone remember when Bethesda, maybe Todd Howard, called Starfield one of the most important RPGs ever made at the Summer Games Fest of 2023? Now, a lot of us fans were well on board of the hype train after this in the summer leading up to September release, only for the hype train to fall off the tracks at the finish line. Reviews came out for it and they were mostly given, and rightly so, average or underwhelming reviews. It's not that Starfield's really an overly bad game, it's more that it didn't meet expectations. Exploration was boring, the many procedural generated points of interest all looked exactly the same as others once you'd landed on a single one of those 1000 planets. Do you know what, in fact, let me go into more in the exploration side of Starfield just a little bit. So, as I've said, overall I think the planetary exploration in Starfield is severely lacking, and a bit, actually, very repetitive. Sure, I get that the planets aren't going to be bustling with life, and I get that not all of them will have funky alien creatures trying to rip our heads off every 5 minutes. But it's just kind of, boring, innit? There are points of interest we can go to, like abandoned outposts, mines, and all of that stuff, but after you've played the game long enough, i.e. 5 hours, you notice these points of interest look particularly familiar to the ones you explored on a neighbouring planet just 20 minutes ago. Like, if you look at other Bethesda games, exploring felt like an adventure, and you'd almost always run into some random encounter along the way. Maybe you'd bump into an NPC, stumble upon a new quest, or find a small shack that has a lot of interesting stuff going on. But in Starfield, it just feels like I'm going from point A to point B. And Miles might say, well, duh, you wouldn't find random NPCs handing out quests in the middle of nowhere on a moon. Which of course is true, but it does make the exploration side of the game not necessarily miserable, but not even remotely memorable, and of course, as I said, very repetitive. Another point lacking on exploration is the fact you also have to run from point A to point B on the surface of the planet with no planetary vehicles, and you can only land in designated landing spots. Like, Bethesda had been shouting from the rooftops about exploration in this game, when in reality, you're shoehorned into a small area of your planet without much freedom of where to go, without it taking a fecking lifetime to get anywhere. Now, of course, the flip side is Starfield does allow you to travel, well, fast travel in a lot of places, like literally anywhere you visited before, whether that be 50 meters away from you or in a totally different system. But if I can fast travel to all these places, what's the point of my ship beyond being able to engage in a few space combat situations out of pure choice? Now, some people say, well, you don't have to use the fast travel feature, but because I know it's there, and as I've said, other areas of exploration are lacking, I'm going to use it to save time because it's boring if I don't. It's not worth using it really until exploration is made more interesting. I'm going to be using fast travel everywhere. To be honest, I think Bethesda made Starfield far too big. They obviously thought that players wanted this grand open universe with 1,000 planets to explore and oversized maps filled with basically nothing, other than a few points of interest which happen to be exactly the same on each planet. To be fair, it's a classic example of quantity over quality. Sure, big open world maps are fine as long as you fill them with quality content. Like, Starfield is just big for the sake of being big. It would have been much better to make this game smaller but with more going on in each of the planets. Like, if they had stuck to, I don't know, say 5 systems with 4 or 5 planets in each of them, they could have filled them with handcrafted content, and even with future updates, they could have added more systems that could be introduced in both official DLC and via modders. There is so much content in the game, and I just feel it'd be far better in a smaller, systems, which can then be built upon afterwards. Currently, everything just feels disconnected, certainly not helped by those loading screens, which I'll get onto in just a second. And sure, space combat is good, but the reality is, it's not strictly necessary for you to complete the story. I think for the most part you can complete the game without getting into more than, 1 or 2 space battles. And again, crafting ships is great fun if that's your thing. But you can come across ships along the way which are more than fine for completing the game. The same goes for outposts. It's a cool thing to have, but you can basically skip that entire area of the game completely. So as I said, there's so much stuff in the game, but there's no real reason to use half of it. Right, another bugbear of this game for me is loading screens. You want to go into your ship? Quick loading screen. Enter a building on a planet? Quick loading screen. Go into a lift and click a floor? Quick loading screen. Land on a planet from space? Quick loading screen. Take off from a planet? Loading screen. Travel within New Atlantis? Loading screen. You get the point. Practically everything you ever do in Starfield requires you to sit through a short loading screen. I mean, come on, we're in 2024 for Christ's sake. Why are there so many fecking loading screens in literally every aspect of the game? Why can't I just walk into my ship seamlessly? Why can't I land on a planet seamlessly? You know, like you can do in No Man's Sky. Why does this random door to get into a building need a fecking loading screen? If you haven't gathered already, folks, I hate the abundance of loading screens in Starfield, and it appears so do most of everyone else. What a ball ache. Now, let me rant about something else. So, I've played many games in the past where the AI is quite, fantastic. Games like The Last of Us, Red Dead Redemption 2, Metal Gear Solid The Phantom Pain, and others. The AI in Starfield, however, is not fantastic. In fact, it can barely be classed as okay. In fact, you know what? I'm going to be brutally honest. It's shite. Enemies either practically walk straight into your bullets, or they crouch behind something that doesn't really give them proper cover, and then they pop up every 5 seconds to shoot something, making it so easy to pick them off. And in the off chance that they do neither of those things, I've had them just run away, which is odd, and then you can just stroll up behind them and pick them off with ease. Like, I've played Starfield on hard, and my only deaths were in space battles, which, by the way, I do think are pretty cool, but the human enemy AI is basically useless, and they don't provide a challenge whatsoever to anyone who's had any experience of first or third person shooters. So, how about the choices we can make along the way in the game? You'd think, given the way the game was hyped up about these choices, that they would have a big impact on the story and the game world around you. But for the most part, you'd be wrong. I mean, sure, there is one big choice you can make in the story, and then the rest have very minor consequences. So at the end of the day, in the main story, at least barring that one I just mentioned, but I'm not going to say what it is because, spoilers, they all just take you on a slightly different path to the same exact result, which effectively makes those choices meaningless. Like, I don't feel any pressure about making these choices, but that's what I want to see. It kind of feels like Skyrim, but on training wheels. Or stabilizers if you're from the UK. So, ever since its release, Starfield has been getting mixed reviews or bad reviews, and it is currently the lowest rated Bethesda game ever created. Even below Fallout 76, though apparently that did have somewhat of a resurgence if I'm not mistaken. I haven't played it myself. But one thing to note is Bethesda have actually been responding to bad or mixed user reviews for Starfield, which, for a AAA game and a AAA producer, is totally unheard of. Some gamers rightly pointed out that landing on empty planets is boring, and Bethesda came back saying they're designed to be empty and that landing on them is in fact not boring. They claimed that astronauts who landed on the moon didn't find it boring, but there is one fecking huge difference between landing on the actual moon in real life and landing on it inside a video game, for Christ's sake. They have absolutely no right to decide what us gamers find boring or not in their video game. Anyway, moving swiftly onwards. Now, a lot of those things I mentioned and ranted about could all be sorted, or at the very least improved with official mod support whenever Bethesda decides to eventually release that later in the year. Hopefully as soon as feckin' possible. Now, sure, there have been some unofficial mods out there for it up until now, but I think we're going to see a major improvement when its official mod support is live. Now, I'm not expecting Starfield to need or even have the kind of redemption arc that Cyberpunk 2077 or No Man's Sky had, mainly because, to be honest, the game isn't in as bad a state as those two games were at launch. I mean, sure, it's a bit boring and shallow, but it's a fully functioning game, unlike the other two were, as they were buggy messes. But it's also because the mods community can't wait to get their hands on it properly and improve the game in a wide variety of ways. The sooner the official mod support comes out for Starfield, the better. Now, the team behind Starfield is a damn big one. I think it's something around like 250 people, so they definitely have the manpower to create massive updates for this game so the universe feels much less empty and much less repetitive. Like, going out exploring currently feels anything but exciting, but that could be changed in future updates and with the help of the insanely good modders out there waiting to get their hands on it. Now, I know there is a pretty damn big update for Starfield coming out in the very near future. I mean, in fact, I think as of the recording of this audio, it is in a beta phase, so it remains to be seen if it has a huge improvement or not, but the update supposedly is meant to bring out over 100 fixes, including quality of life improvements and other quest fixes. You can find the full list of patch notes available on Bethesda's own website, so hopefully this is step one in resolving some of the major issues surrounding Starfield at this current time. I will be doing another video in the near future around what could, and quite frankly should, be done to make it a better game and closer to what we all expected. Well, there you have it, folks. There are some of the main reasons that Starfield literally fell on its ass after being promised as one of the games of the year for 2023. It left the conversation just as soon as it arrived. Now, my real hope is Bethesda get this game to where we all thought it would be. What do you think? Do you think they'll manage it, or have you given up no matter how many updates or mods we get? Let me know in those comments below. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're still here, it would be totally awesome if you could support my channel by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. You can now also become a channel member as well, and as always, thank you for watching this video, and I shall catch you in the next one.